Gente, eu me chamo Eduardo Fraga, o Dudu. Eu cuido aqui do Caldeira da parte de arte, cultura, economia criativa, que tem a ver com essa nossa expansão para esse prédio novo aqui na frente. Então, todo esse prédio ali das fábricas Guaíba, todo o térreo dele, vai ser um centro de tecnologias criativas, com uma galeria de arte digital na entrada, com acesso livre ao público, sem catracas. Então, ele é um símbolo muito grande e importante para nós dessa construção, mais do que um prédio, mas um distrito, um bairro, um espaço, um território criativo e tecnológico aqui no 4º Distrito do Navegantes. Então, a gente fica muito, muito feliz por todos vocês estarem aqui nessa 4ª edição da Semana Caldeira e de fazer esse bairro estar vibrante e cheio de gente numa quinta-feira às 14h. Então, muito, muito obrigado por todos terem vindo. Para quem ainda não sabe, o Instituto Caldeira é um instituto privado, sem fins lucrativos, dedicado ao fomento de negócios, inovação e educação. O Caldeira é uma rede global com mais de 350 empresas e instituições que, em colaboração, geram conexões que aceleram a inovação e elevam a competitividade do nosso Estado. Por fim, eu queria agradecer aos nossos patrocinadores. Esse é um evento que está atraindo mais de 15 mil pessoas durante esses 5 dias, 100% gratuito, 100% disponível para toda a cidade, além dos nossos membros. Então, em nome de todos os patrocinadores, eu agradeço o Sebrae, o Agibank e o Banrisul. Não esqueçam do nosso lema, é para isso que a gente está aqui numa semana tão cheia, tão movimentada. Dê oi, dê bom dia, dê boa tarde e conversem com estranhos. Saiam do celular, olhem para as pessoas e conversem. E a nossa conversa de hoje é mais uma edição do Conversas Criativas, que é uma série de conversas que o Caldeira criou junto com o Fernando. A gente tem esse privilégio de ter esse amigo gaúcho global que está a fim de ajudar a gente a criar coisas poderosas. E a ideia é falar sobre criatividade na prática. A ideia é conversar com diferentes perfis de profissionais para não só... E aqui, então, não vai ser um pitch. Vocês não vão ver a Louise falando sobre os cases dela, nem o Fernando falando sobre os cases dele, mas muito mais uma conversa profunda, com calma, com tempo, sobre criatividade na prática, sobre o que eles aprenderam nesses anos trabalhando com equipes criativas, com projetos criativos e com desafios criativos. Então, sem mais delongas, eu queria dar boas-vindas ao Fernando, que, além de um grande estrategista criativo, é um grande, grande amigo, que transita entre as artes e a publicidade. Atualmente, ele é sócio e vice-presidente global de estratégia da Gut, que é uma agência muito premiada, tem 7 anos de vida e ganhou 50 leões em Cannes já, e trabalha com marcas globais como Mercado Livre, Google e muitas outras. Ele já foi eleito um dos principais estrategistas do mundo pela Ad Age, e ele também tem uma série de artigos chamado Vocabulário Extraordinário no LinkedIn. Recomendo olharem e lerem, que é muito, muito legal. E também faz parte do comitê estratégico do Programa Brasileiro de Reservas de Surf. Aliás, temos o Carlos Burli hoje aí, né? Agora vai o da Louise. Para quem não deu 100% de conta, mas é uma palestra em inglês. Eu estou falando em português aqui para nós, então baixem um aplicativo, façam as coisas que tem que fazer para todo mundo entender. A Louise falou que vai falar devagar e também ela fala espanhol, caso a gente precise muito, ela ajuda a gente. Mas ela é uma líder de marketing global com experiências em marcas nos Estados Unidos, na Europa, na América Latina. É formada em Cambridge com MBA pela Tuck School of Business. Ela passou 15 anos na Diageo em funções de marketing global, regional e local. Se mudou para a Argentina em 2017, onde ela ingressou no Mercado Livre como diretora de branding e construiu, nesses 5 anos que ela passou lá, uma marca super poderosa que chegou, inclusive, a sair, né, desse lugar de um varejo mais duro e ganhar um Grand Prix em Cannes. Depois disso, ela foi CMO da Notco, um unicórnio de tecnologia alimentar, e agora ingressou na Netflix como diretora de marketing e publicidade para os países do sul da América Latina, que não incluem o Brasil. E ela é super conhecida por construir e liderar equipes de alto desempenho, fazer grandes parcerias com criativos de classe mundial e integrar trabalhos de alto impacto que colocam as marcas dentro da cultura. Então, bem-vindos. Muito, muito, muito obrigado por ter vindo até aqui. Uma salva de palmas, gente.
Thank you, Dudu, for the invitation again to be a part of the Caldeira Week. It's been a pleasure so far to be here helping this organization. So, Lou, we've met maybe 6 years ago. I remember at that time Mercado Libre didn't actually have a marketing department, and you were fundamental actually to build the department and then build the brand as a consequence of building the team. I really, really appreciate that you said yes to this invitation and you fly from Buenos Aires to be here with us today. You arrived at midnight, just now basically, and now you're here. So first of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. I love coming to Brazil. I love that you have cerveza fria. I'm hopefully going to share one after this talk. And I love how you guys dance way better than the Argentinians. So it's really an absolute pleasure to be here, especially with someone that we started working together and is now I can call a firm friend. So it's also lovely for me to be here in a place in Porto Alegre, which is first home. So it means a lot. So thank you. And I'm sorry I can't speak Portuguese. I can speak Spanish, but I think my English may be a little bit better.
So Lou, I want to start with something a bit more personal as a warm-up question, and then we take from there. Do you think you're creative? Do you consider yourself creative?
Reflecting on this, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I'm still not prepared. So I do not consider myself particularly creative. I think if I look back at my career, what I have built it on is maybe recognizing creativity in others and knowing where to, what creativity is going to work well with consumers and then investing behind it. But I think if we take a step back, we're really all creative. We're all born creative. Humans are creative. We've been, for thousands and thousands of years, built ourselves on storytelling. Before the Bible, there was stories. We live with senses. We're curious. We solve problems, and that's if you're alive, you are in some way creative. So although I don't actually consider myself particularly creative, I think humans we are all creative fundamentally.
I think I heard from this educator called Ken Robinson. Oh, yeah. He became a kind of a more mainstream voice through a TED talk that he gave at some point, and he says that more or less at the age of 8 years old, a kid learns to use the eraser. And the kid realizes that they can make a mistake. And then suddenly now you make mistakes and you start judging yourself and you feel judged, etc. Maybe that's just one of the barriers that get in the way of feeling creative. Which other barriers do you think exist that maybe make people grow to feel maybe not creative anymore?
Yeah, I agree. I think if we think about how we grow up in society, it's many things are constructed to kind of eliminate creativity or make you feel anxious about being seen as being creative. So I think if I think first of all about building on that example from Ken, like the educational system, how historically exams were created was all about memorizing. No, it wasn't about asking questions, problem solving. No, you had to, we all, certainly I'm a lot older than you, we had to memorize and repeat back, which is the opposite of creativity. So I think educational systems are now evolving to be more question-based and problem-solving based. And I think another example would be when when we start our first jobs, or if you work in a bigger company environment, your performance review, how are you measured, is all about achievement and success. And to really be creative, you need to experiment, you need to try things, you need to be open to failure, and that's how you learn and move on. But that's not recognized certainly in a bigger company environment historically. It was all about, how much did you increase sales? Well, Fur, not sure about him. He did that campaign that didn't work very well. So, black mark for Fur. So that's kind of, I think that the way that we are brought up in bigger companies also doesn't help creativity.
Is there a way for a big company or a company of any size and any industry, even in industry that are not considered creative industry, is there a way for a company to be more creative and to create a more creative-driven environment inside?
Yeah, I think nowadays we're seeing much more of that. So there are lots of examples, like bigger companies like Google. They will portion off some of their team and some of their budget to just go, and they call it the moonshot thinking, or 10x. And that's a team and a budget who can go off and do whatever they want to do, with the aim of getting a man to the moon or a woman to the moon or whatever it might be. So I think one way companies are doing it is dividing up that as a possibility. The other way you can do it is by recognizing experimentation and rewarding it. So say, you know what, Fur, it was really great that you tried to do that. It didn't work, but that's okay, because now we've learned. Because you only really learn when things don't work. And that's true innovation and creativity. So I think that's the second way that certainly in Mercado Libre, we were very much recognized for experimenting, trying, better continuo, evolving, and really embedding that as part of the culture, and as a leader, role modeling that. I think that would be the second way that I'm seeing companies do that.
I remember at that time, maybe that's 2020, when we landed on Lo mejor está llegando, or the best is coming, to be the organizing idea, not only for advertising of Mercado Libre, but for the whole organization, really. It was a rallying cry for all employees internally and externally. And I think at that point, when the North Star of this company was clear through the best is coming, things in a way started falling in place. Everything else became a bit easier, and in a way helped the environment just feel a bit more creative. Do you connect those things as well? Do you think having the clarity of thought when it comes to your North Star as a company helps with creativity at the end?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you don't want creativity for creativity's sake, And when you're working in a company, you're there to do a job and achieve something for either shareholders or for an owner or for an entrepreneur. And I think each company has a North Star, has a proposito that really motivates and drives it. And you need to always start with that. So Mercado Libre was all about democratizing commerce and democratizing payments. Netflix is all about entertaining the world. So each brand or company has that underlying proposito, which is why it was started. So you need to find that, and then you need to figure out how to communicate that in a way that is going to connect both internally with the team and externally with your audience. And that is the foundation of everything.
It was very important, I think, for us to do great work together, not only with Mercado Libre, but then with Nautico, after the company that you went to after Mercado Libre, it was very important to bring other departments on board. I remember on Mercado Libre having meetings with you and your team, but also with the business people and the product people, and trying to take them through this journey of, if you do braver work, you have a bigger business impact. Part of that was to also involve the law team, the legal team, because we were moving very fast and doing really risky work. I think it comes to mind the Constitution work in 2023. As everyone here knows, as Brazilians, on January 8th, the day of my birthday, by the way, 2023, the Congress got invaded. And on the next day, Mercado Libre did this promotion, selling the Constitution with 99% of discount, so that more people could know what the Constitution is. So we moved very fast, and we had to have the legal team with us. Tell me more about how you managed to do that, because these are not small companies. Netflix, Mercado Libre, and Nautico, these are gigantic companies. So how do you orchestrate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Sort of just to take a step back, once I think you've got your North Star and you know where you want to go, then you need to really make sure that you're communicating that internally in the language that the company uses. So each company is driven by a certain department or function. Okay, so Diageo, as an alcoholic drinks company, is driven by sales and marketing. Mercado Libre, as a tech company, is driven by the product team. Netflix is driven by the content team that are making all the amazing series and films. And Nautico is driven by the AI engineering team. So you need to get them on board and use them to help develop lo mejor está llegando, whatever the tagline, the overall arching idea that you want to communicate behind the company. That's kind of the first point. And then the second point is, if you really want to be creative and take risks, you need to be able to move fast. And I think that's what I love about the roles I've had here in Latin America versus the more corporate structure in Europe and America, which we can come on to talk about, is that if you get to the right person here and you're also in a founder-led organization, you can move very, very fast. So I'll give you the example, even before the Constitution, of the logo, Codo a Codo. So we were leading the brand into pandemic on, I think it was March the 17th, 2020. And somebody from Fur's agency wrote to me and said, Lou, you need to change the logo, which is the shaking hands of Mercado Libre, into Codo a Codo. And I was like, wow, that's like, how am I going to, I was like, that is, obviously we had no idea what was going to happen. But we were like, that's potentially game-changing. As a brand, you need to lead by example, always. And within 2 WhatsApps, I was with the CTO of Mercado Libre, who then also checked with Marcus Galperin. And within an hour, I think, we had the go-ahead to change the logo. And that would not have happened, I think, in a company that was not so entrepreneurial driven. And also I knew, and you knew that if you got the product head okay, you were fine. So it was a bit of a combination, I think, of like the culture and entrepreneurship, as well as, making sure you get to the right person immediately. And yes, if you want to do real creative from a comms standpoint, you need to always have your chief legal officer on side.
So you touched upon this notion, and this, I assume you put that as a contrast between this kind of rule-oriented culture in the UK versus Latin America. And I think the backdrop of this question is, working with you, what I have always enjoyed is that you have this very plural repertoire. when you judge an idea, you are judging from so many different perspectives at the same time. And I think that's, for me, why you're such a valuable marketer to work with. But I can also assume that you have struggled in the beginning, coming from Scotland and your work in the UK and in Europe and in America, then landing in Buenos Aires, working with Mercado Libre, which at that point, as I said, didn't have a structure. Talk us through those learnings and those challenges and the differences between the creative industry in the UK versus in Latam.
Well, I have lots of stories to tell you. And I think the first thing I would say is you guys are in an amazing place here because you're in like the region in the world that has the most spontaneity, creativity, fluidness, as part of inherently who you are and how you live. The UK is the opposite, the United Kingdom. So you grow up kind of more playing by the rules in the UK. In Latin America, if you play by the rules, you don't win. I'm using this as a positive example. You guys always manage to find the way round, the problem solving, the think outside the box, whereas the British person is waiting for the process-driven, pragmatic approach. I always used to like to have an Argentinian on my team in the UK, and we had like a massive issue once with a supply problem with Gordon's gin, and like the British people were like, oh my God, I need to like write down what's happening, what's the issue, what's the problem, and the Argentinian guy had already found a solution, which is like amazing. So I think there's something around, and then Fer, Fer's also worked in London and all around the world. So there's something around playing by the rules and breaking the rules is a kind of difference between the two. And then I think another one is spontaneity and planning. So my husband is Argentinian. And so when we were dating, we would come and visit Buenos Aires. And my God, like my husband is like really popular because we would arrive on Saturday morning and then Saturday afternoon in his mum's house, there'd be like 50 people for an asado. And I was like, in London, you have to invite people like for dinner 2 months in advance. Whereas the Argentinians are like, hey, it's asado tonight, and suddenly everyone's there. And I'm sure Brazil is very similar. Then I realized that life is a lot more spontaneous. And there's another great story of some Argentinian friends in London who were invited for dinner, and you get invited often in the UK formally with a little card, Saturday, whatever, October. And they arrived that Saturday, like 2 days later, at the house for dinner, but the invitation was for like 8 weeks later. So they were a little bit ahead of the game. So I think this notion of how this impacts creativity is that British people are more process-driven, are more organized, are more always planning, and Latin Americans are much more able to be spontaneous and live in the moment. And I think it's much easier to learn the former, it's much easier to learn the British way than it is to learn the Latin American way. And that's why I mean, like for you guys, as you're in your careers, it's much easier to learn the structural foundations of how to do a brand positioning or concept than it is to learn the other more fluid creativity, think outside the box, which I think you naturally have inherently. But what was your view for working in London and then Sao Paulo?
I think it was similar to that, I remember I had only worked in Brazil prior to moving to London.
Right.
And I think the first year in London, I struggled a lot. I was about to give up every month. I was like, I need to go back to Brazil. These people hate me, you know. Yeah, but then I realized, you know, I think I need to I need to adapt myself a little bit. I think the word that comes to mind is rigor. And at some point after the first year, I realized that if there was something missing the way that I was thinking strategy was that rigorous, disciplined foundation. To be honest, even looking back today, which is now I think 10 years later, I think if I didn't have that experience of learning the academic foundations behind what I was doing, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today. You know, sometimes I joke with the team in São Paulo, that they need more British planners in the department, because I think that actually helps. As just a British strategist, you'd probably not survive in Brazil, to be honest. I think you need that jogo de cintura, as we say. You're not going to understand that expression, and I don't know how to translate that. It's not translatable. But I think it helped me a lot, the academic discipline and foundation before what I was doing spontaneously, to your point. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally. And you made me just think randomly of another thing that I think really impacts here, that more spontaneous creativity, is the weather. Like, it sounds crazy, but like when the sun shines, everything kind of is better. And that doesn't, you know, the UK, you're cold, you're huddled up, you're inside. And that is not also conducive to, I think, you know, to being spontaneous and creative. But I agree with you, Fer. I think that the balance is critical. So think about, for each of you, what's your natural way, and when do you enjoy being creative? When are you at your best? When are you most inspired? And then if you're struggling, look then to the other side, to the yin or the yang. Look for more structure, find it, listen to a podcast, and bring in that foundational aspect. Because it's usually the answer will be somewhere in a balance of both.
Try to visualize this image with me, okay?
Oh my God, scared.
It's a deep pool.
Okay.
With a little staircase, right? You've been to hotels, you know, swimming pool with a little staircase. I think, to me, when you have those foundations, it's like you have that staircase. You can just jump in the pool, and you can immerse into what you're doing passionately and spontaneously, knowing that you have the foundations, the structure, that if something goes wrong, you can go back there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Maybe that's too personal, though.
Yes, no. I was just thinking, when we moved to Argentina and my children were like crying because they didn't want to leave their friends, I was like, don't worry, you're going to have a swimming pool. And they were like, yay! So that's when everyone starts with a swimming pool, I always think about that story. So I think, exactly, if you have the foundations, it enables you to take more risks and almost, we talked about, like, be able to create a bit more chaos because you've always got those foundations to fall back onto. And I think that is certainly, because restrictions and structure can all, in my view, can create better conditions for creativity. It's very difficult to just say, right, Fer, go and be creative. But if I say, Fer, I want you to create an advert for a Smirnoff and apple juice drink that's called Apple Bite, and you've got to use a snake, you're going to go and be incredibly creative.
Smirnoff, apple, snake.
There isn't that.
That's a really interesting brief.
So Adam and Eve, exactly. So, like, whereas if I just say, go and do something for Smirnoff apple drink, where are you going to start?
I love it. Yeah.
There you go.
I'll probably just try to feed a snake with an apple first.
Oh, there you go.
See what happens as a research method. Let me change subject for a bit.
Okay.
So I think that with such repertoire, I believe that when you see a strategy and a plan on a page, you have the ideal execution of that in your mind. So you see something written, you see the concept of an idea, and you go, I can see the ideal execution of that, the perfect execution of that. It just happens that perfection is impossible, right? There are so many variables that you need to deal with that imperfection is always the end result. How do you deal with that gap between what you had in mind as with your repertoire versus reality? At the end, it's not going to be that original image.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think also when you're leading people and you're trying to motivate and inspire people and not restrict creativity, it's very important to know how and when to give feedback, because the perfection is, and what I have in my mind is potentially, not the only way to do something incredible. So I think what I try and do is I try and kind of go in stages, and it's almost back to the foundation, no? So if I'm looking at a piece of work that the team is saying, hey, what do you think of this? Is it strategically on message? Is it communicating what we need it to communicate? Okay, great. If good, yes. If not, that's the feedback that you give. You don't give the feedback, oh, it's red and it should be blue. You start with and you stop and you let the team go back and you say, no, this is not working on the right message. Then you go, okay, the next stage of the message is there. Well, is the creative idea good? Is it engaging? Does it talk about the brand? Are people going to notice it? Does it generate some emotion, a feeling in me? Yes or no? If yes, great, good. If not, stop. It needs to be a better, stronger, conceptually creative. And only then would you go to the executional comments, like the color or the situation or the lighting or whatever. And I think what's really easy as a human person is we go instinctively to executional feedback and comments. And you have to pull yourself back and go through the process and make sure that you're giving the right feedback for the right stage. Otherwise, it becomes totally overwhelming and demotivating and a restrictor of creativity. Does that make sense?
It does. I think there is. I have and I think I mentioned that to you. Maybe that's 2013. I think we were doing this work for Powerade, isotonic drink from Coca-Cola, and we came up with this kind of strategy idea that was. All these sports brands are talking about individual athletes and individual performance. Let's talk about everything that surrounds the individuals. So I went to talk to coaches, sports coaches, one of the surrounding elements of an athlete. So I interviewed the coach of Maureen Maggi, which you don't know, but is the first Brazilian female athlete to win a gold medal at a Summer Olympic game. She's a kind of a big deal in Brazil. So I went to talk to her coach, and he said every time that Maureen runs 100 meters in training, just as training, I spot maybe 30 mistakes. I never get to her with the 30 mistakes, work on those 30 things. I go with 2 of the 30. And I need to be patient and hold myself back that the other 28 will be tackled later, in another training session, in another month, and so on and so forth. So I get you, and I think you do that quite well. Let's not talk about execution in a first creative review. Let's talk about the strategic thinking and the idea, and then maybe later we move into how we can bring that to life. Yeah. So I appreciate that, actually. It's quite important.
No, I was just going to, you made me think about something else, which is like, how do you, thinking about how do you work with a team, how do you motivate them, how do you inspire them? Because as a leader, you're not doing every bit of creative work. It's kind of, how do you create the environment and conditions for creativity, especially when you're working with partners like agencies or creators or influencers. And I think one of the things that I started to do instinctively and then realized that was working quite well was putting yourself out there as a leader, being vulnerable, so that people feel they're in a safe space. Because you can't be creative when you're worried about what people are thinking. So, and you've heard many of my, we'll be in an agency briefing, we'll be chatting about, and I'll be like, well, here's my really bad Louise idea. And I'll throw out some terrible idea. And then everyone feels like, oh, okay, well, Lou said that, so I feel like I can say. It's like you never want to be the person asking the stupid question, but everyone's probably thinking of the same question. And just kind of like creating that environment where people feel like they can brainstorm and say what they think and build on other people's thoughts is really, really important for creativity, in my view.
I agree with you. It's almost like in a meeting where everyone is sharing ideas. I think you, through quantity, with all these options and possibilities, you start learning from it. And what Lou said is quite wrong and bad, but we can learn why is it wrong and bad, and that's going to further. Well, it's kind of wrong and bad, but we can learn some. So I think through quantity of ideas being shared, you actually get to better outcomes. So I think additionally to that, I think the outcome is improved too.
And always say, never in a brainstorming say no or but. You always say yes and, because that's another little thing that people react to negatively.
That's funny. I just met with someone. I'm not sure if I don't think he's here. I think he was going to a different panel, which sucks, right? He preferred another panel to this one. But he worked at this agency called Scala here.
Oh, okay.
And I think at that time I was also working with Axel, who is right here at that time. So that's 2007, I think. And this guy called Gustavo Mini, her wife at that time, I think they're still married. She was my boss. I really hope they're still married.
Yes. Let's keep going.
So I'm going so far into like contextualizing what I'm gonna say, but anyway. So I really, I really loved her at that time because she was, I think she was doing something similar to me in a way. I remember I was this person who I was always setting up myself in a meeting saying, listen, I'm just brainstorming. So what am I gonna say? I'm just brainstorming. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong. I'm just brainstorming. So she wrote, I'm brainstorming, in Portuguese, eu estou brainstormando, which is the translation to Portuguese, in a Post-it, and just glued to my shirt. I'm brainstorming. That was so liberating. Yeah. I think everyone should do that in every meeting.
No, For you do this really well. Like, for when in your brainstorming mode, you always get out a bit of paper and you just start drawing. Like, you put 3 words, connection, and then you put... Now that we're all working virtually, he like holds the bit of paper up to the camera. You're like trying to see what it says. And I think just as a more senior person, you doing that, it's liberating not only for you, but for the rest of the people. And I think that's our role.
Yeah. So the person I was referring to is called Lucia Xavier. That was my boss at that time at this agency. It's still married. Great.
For you.
There we go. So you told me just at lunch that your success at Netflix is measured against how many people are talking about the titles.
Correct.
So if people are talking about the titles, you got your bonus, I guess.
Yeah, we don't.
You don't need to get into that.
No. But yes,
how much
it's all about conversation. So at Netflix, the goal is how many people are talking about what our series or our movies.
I can assume that when a title is like adolescence, a lot of the talking will be also negative, not just positive. It will have some controversy. Maybe not adolescence, but other titles may generate some controversy. Still good? Is that still on
Still good. It's all about generating conversation and being part of culture.
Do you believe, from a communications perspective, that controversy, from a talkability perspective, is a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, there is the old saying that, like, no PR is bad PR. No, how do you say, prensa is bad. No press is bad press. I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. I think that nowadays we need to, as brand leaders, you need to relinquish control. You need to be comfortable with that. That people will take the conversation where it needs to go. And I think, my personal view is, you only intervene if you see that there is real damage to the corporate brand. Otherwise, let it go.
Yeah.
What's your view?
My view, yeah, I think from an idea perspective, to be transparent, I think I'm looking for controversy in the conception of the idea.
Yeah.
I'm looking for those insights and thoughts that are divisive at first, but then I know I need to mitigate that at some point when the idea is being deployed. Yeah. I'll give you an example. In 2014, I was in São Paulo working at this agency called David, and Burger King was our biggest account. We were starting working with Burger King in the United States from São Paulo. And one of the ideas that we did was called the Proud Whopper, which was the Whopper, which is the Big Mac of Burger King, that was special for the Pride Parade in San Francisco, which is the largest Pride Parade in the world. And I remember the client wanted to test the idea, the product as a concept, consumer testing before deploying. We did 3 focus groups. In the 3 of them, there was a 50-50 division.
Yeah.
And the client said, we have the idea. We just need to change, because at that time we called the Gay Whopper. It was the name of the idea. And I think the main learning was, let's call it the Pride Whopper, because it's for everyone. So I think that was, in a way, I think that's where I learned, you know what, maybe that's, from a conception perspective, that's a good thing, to look for it intentionally.
Exactly. Yeah, and as totally, and as marketers, you look to make people feel something and to evoke emotion in people, so they then take action. Means in its nature, you need some tension and controversy. Otherwise, it's just wallpaper, which is not effective. And I think coming back to the theme of the week around risk, often the biggest risk is not to take the risk, because if you're spending millions of dollars on something that is not eliciting any reaction in anybody, that's a big risk.
That's definitely the biggest risk you can have.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Lou, this is originally Instituto Caldeira is an innovation hub. And it's expanding beyond. But given that's its origins, I need to ask you about AI.
Yeah.
I was forced to ask you about AI. I've been asked about AI a few times too, and it tends to be quite boring. But listen, it's because it's asked too many times. But I will ask you through the perspective of I actually think many times is an amazing thing if you work with creativity, like literally. What's your take on it? Is it helping you creatively? Is it helping you get to better ideas? I'm sure it's helping you move faster. Exactly. Is it helping you move better?
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like really excited about it. And I think, first of all, I'm not concerned that AI is going to mean that there is no need for human involvement in the creative process. I think the foundational part we talked about, the strategic planning part, needs to be kind of a human at the helm steering the ship. And I also really believe that the farming for, or the search for a real human truth and a real human insight on which you can base a creative idea also needs to and will still be, be led by the team. And then, so that second part of the creative process is exactly what you said. Like, experimentation is the friend of creativity. AI allows you to experiment in how to execute your strategy much quicker and much cheaper. So you can do A/B testing, you can do different executions, etc., all managed by the team, but it will allow you to get to a better place much quicker. And I also think it will democratize creativity, and that will give smaller brands, small companies access to really, creative that looks, world class for a lot cheaper. So I think that's also really positive. And it's not easy. Like at NotCo, we did a campaign with Gut. We did 4 or 5 ads, totally AI created. And the stuff that you don't even think about, like we had a dog that needed to eat a snack. We were doing, the idea was all around the NotCo in artificial intelligence created a pet-friendly snack. So when you're going for a walk with your dog, you sit down on the bench, you actually could pull out something that you could share with your dog instead of being worried that it was, you had to eat dog food or they had to eat something that was going to damage them. So in the AI, we were trying to do this picture of the dog eating the snack. And we were like, no, we want the dog to look a little bit more, with more teeth in the mouth. So then what does AI do? It doesn't work on the same dog with more teeth. It showed us like a really scary Alsatian dog. So it's like, people think it's like the answer. It's still very incipient in how it works and how you can make images come through, obviously through written prompts. But overall, it's a positive.
Lou, so we are 10 minutes away, and I want to ask you a final question, and then try to have some time for, you're too valuable not for me to open up for the public to ask a question directly, okay? So my last question to you is, discussing between the two of us before this, we talked about, what's the most important briefing of our time? What's the most important creative briefing of our time that everyone should be working on proactively, right? And you talked to me about climate change, and climate change being this massive problem that is also a communications problem.
Agree.
Expand on that idea.
Agree. It's definitely the most important creative briefing that we have in our time. And I think we need to solve it through creativity. And I think we have two, I think the biggest issue is fundamentally, if you look back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs of human people, we're fundamentally selfish. We need to eat, we need to be warm, we need to have shelter. That's how we work. So how can creativity help an individual realize that our actions individually today will impact the collective future? And that individuality versus collectiveness is something that is so difficult to make people feel and care about. We see it every day at the moment in the world that we're living in. Like, if you're in the UK and Ukraine is, an hour and a half away on a plane, and to make people care about the war and what is happening there is very, very difficult because people live their lives. And that's just one example of what's happening around the world today. So I think, how can creativity make people care enough, elicit an emotion that then drives an action? And that is the biggest task for I believe, for the creative community today.
there is this book, and I'll just finish on that. There's this book called "We Are the Weather" from Jonathan Safran Foer,
Right.
where he sets up this. He tried to articulate what the briefing is for communications. I think it gives a lot of context to what you're
Right.
saying. So it's a brilliant book. If everyone knows Jonathan Safran Foer, and go buy this book. "We Are the Weather" is amazing.
Right.
I'm done. I know you a lot already. Does any of you want to ask questions to Lou directly? And you can ask in Portuguese if you prefer.
Or you can ask Fer. He's amazing.
Not me, only Lou.
Sorry,
Hi, my name is Luana. I'm a student here in Instituto Caldeira. I wanted to ask you, how do you think Netflix will creatively evolve in the next years, especially with AI and other technologies? Thank you.
So I can share one example that I think our CEO shared on the earnings call, which is that if you love science fiction, we recently launched a really amazing series in Argentina called the Eternauta. And there's one incredible, it's based on a graphic novel from the 1950s. And there's one incredible scene where a building collapses, which would have cost millions to do and taken a lot of time to do physically. And that was one example where we were able to use AI to create that effect much more cost efficiently. So that's certainly one example of how we're using AI at the moment.
Anyone else? Yeah. I think you need the mic.
Hey, my name is Bruna, and I want to know how you deal with burnout. I'm a student of publicity here, and sometimes I feel very tired. I have a class that is marketing, and I'm reading Philip Kotler.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I don't know if I'm understanding, but I'm trying. But sometimes I feel very stuck in burnout. So how do you deal with it?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling this. I think in our very overly connected world right now, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed and burnt out. A lot when you've got your cell phone pinging the whole time. I think just on that, make sure you're reading it, Philip Kotler, in Portuguese. Okay, just if not, use AI to translate it for you, and also try. I use AI to often because I have to spend a lot of time in the car to change it to audio so that you're actually listening rather than reading. That I found also help. In terms of burnout, you need to know yourself, and you need to set your own boundaries. You need to know when you relax, when you can have headspace, and put in place. We're creatures of habit, humans. So put in place those moments that are critical for you. Whether it's, I was with my brother-in-law last week, and he's doing 2 hours a day where he's not with his cell phone because that was helping him, cope with a stressful moment. And so it doesn't, you've probably got your, how you manage your work-life balance. For me, it's like I have to exercise every morning, even if it's for half an hour. And that sets me up from the day. And if I don't do that, I really, really feel it. and I need to make sure I have, certain enough time with my family, that I'm not traveling the whole time. The things that I know, if it starts to slip, I can't be at my best. And so I think the first of all is just really knowing yourself and being aware of what's triggering those moments, and then putting in place habits and processes so that you can manage that. I don't know, Fer, if you've got other thoughts.
Well, I guess the pragmatic answer is, if you're working in a company for other people, demand a mental health program and mental health policies. If they don't have, they need to. And I think on the second is, when I had my biggest burnout, I had a few, I think, in my career. But there was one that was diagnosed with burnout, and that was when I got divorced. And I was working actually with Lou at that time. That's 2000, I don't know. 20, I think. And I remember just to continue to work in that process of pain, in need of healing, but not being able to because I was working too hard. And I think in one meeting, and I really hope you don't remember, but I just discounted everything on Lou, actually, in front of 20 people in the meeting. And yeah, you do. Of course you do. And I knew I had fucked up, right? So I immediately after the meeting, I actually left the meeting. I was so disrespectful. So I left the meeting like, fuck this shit, in Portuguese or in Spanish or in Portugal.
Same.
And then I left, and I oh my God, I fucked up with Lou, right? So I sent a message to the founder of my agency, and I said, Gaston is his name. Gaston, I fucked up. And Gaston knew I was, divorcing, etc. And he said, the thing that I will say or forward to you, what he told me, Fer, you need to stop the machine. And my interpretation was to literally take a month off and go live on the beach. It was the middle of the pandemic, so everything was remote. So I went to my mom's house in the beach, and I stayed a month there. So stop the machine.
Exactly.
If you can, right? I think some people may not have the opportunity to do so, but I had, so I did.
That's great. Thank you so much for the question.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I am 18 years old. I'm from Generation Caldeira here from Institute. I study marketing design, and I wanted to know more. I am searching about this topic, and I wanted to know, how do you think the excess of information impacts the creativity of creative people, like people who works with communication and with art, and how does it impact on our work when we have, I don't know, maybe we were in the creative blocking, thank you. And how does it impact us, because we have a lot of information nowadays. So how can we be creative when we think like all that done, it's already ready, and where do you have to look? Something related, sorry.
No, it's very, very clear. So I think a couple of things. Creativity arises out of boredom. People used to say that creativity is like trying to focus your imagination. So, putting in excessive amounts of information is not generally helpful for the creative process. So what can you do about that? You can divide it up into, if you're trying to, first of all, what's the brief? What are you trying to achieve? One line. Fer is a master of the one-line brief. What are you trying to do? And then try different start points. If you've got all of these types of information, pick one as a start point and try and think, where would that get you creatively if that was your start point? Then go to a totally different one and try that. But don't try and kind of put everything into one thing. would be, certainly that's how I try and tackle things. I'm not sure, I'm probably being very specific about a brief, and you're probably being a bit more
No, but
generic.
I think it helps. I think to build on that, I would say, I think you're probably selective about what you eat and the food that you eat, and you may say, I don't eat that because I don't like, or it's not good for my health, and I eat this, and I think the same applies to information, right? Yeah. As someone who is, exposed to information and content all the time, you got to be selective. You got to be a curator as much as a consumer of content. It's just the same as food, right? I would say that is, I think with time, if you have that awareness, you go, you know what, I'm not going to follow this person. I want to block this on my feed because it's not good food for my brain. It's distracting me. It's not building on my knowledge. It's just distracting me. It's giving me brain rot, right? So I think that. Try to behave like a curator of your own content consumption.
That's an awesome way to think about it, Fat. And I think that, and then the watch out is that you don't just eat only one food, just read and listen the people that you always agree with. Like, you can make sure you keep the diversity, of information or of diet. But I love that way of thinking about it.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Louise. I'm 22 years old, and I work here at Grandeni. I want to know, we know that when Netflix starts a conversation, everyone's going to engage in it because it's such a big platform. So when your team goes to think about content to put online, how do you divide between what Netflix wants to say and what the public is currently engaging on in other platforms?
So I'm not sure how do we align what our message is with what conversations are happening?
Yeah.
I think we don't have a kind of clear, like, this is what we want to say. We work very much generating conversation about a particular IP or title. So let's take Wednesday or Squid Games. We throw in different ways of generating conversation and see where it goes. Or we may look at what's trending on TikTok, or different ways of different formats, different dances, and then put Squid Games or Wednesday into those formats. But I don't think we're not kind of rigid that this has to be the message, and we're very flexible and free about letting the conversation go where it needs to go.
I think there's one thing that I feel from an IP perspective, Netflix is quite good at, is being very in tune, sometimes in a scary way, if you think about House of Cards, being in tune with what's happening right now. So to that question is, when I think about adolescence is such a great commentary on a current issue we are facing right now. It's almost a documentary, right? That is live, I think House of Cards was the same. It's just incredible how each season was connected with what's going on.
I think they're way too young to know about House of Cards.
Come on. Fuck that up. But at the same time, you have this other side of things, which is like Squid Games, which is, it is also obviously a commentary on culture, but it comes from this very original idea. But I think on the first point, it's like Netflix is so good at just being tuned with what's going on right now.
Well, I think it's a great point. I think we've got the benefit of being a global platform. So what we're able to do is take amazing content and ideas and insights and stories from different cultures and make them available globally, which was never able to happen in the past. Like, content was very local and consumed very locally. And I think that just naturally gives you a breadth of insights, stories, and interests that we've never seen before.
I think we have one last question. Yeah, there we go.
Hi. Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Rafaela. I work at Grupo Panvel. It was a pleasure to listen to you, so thank you, first of all. And my question is, we've seen you all have a lot of repertoire, so how do you keep yourselves with this lifelong learning lifestyle, and how do you manage that in your routine, and what do you suggest us to consume, to study, and subjects that can help us keep creative?
I think you need to know yourself first and how you like consuming information and how you like learning, because everyone is different. So I'm somebody that I like to talk and listen to people. So other people like to go off by themselves and listen to a podcast. I tend to, make sure that I'm, meeting and questioning more certain groups of people who I like to be inspired by and learn from. Make sure that that's kind of like an ongoing thing in my life. It's kind of one, like being in person and structuring those moments so that they're regular. And then secondly, I try and use as much of my whatever could be downtime to really listen to. I have a couple of podcasts that are my go-to podcasts to keep me connected into either what's happening in the world of entertainment or into the world of what's happening in tech and politics in the US, which is another thing that I'm very interested in. But you can't do everything, so you need to pick how do you like in taking information, and then secondly, what interests you, and then and make sure that that's kind of what you focus on, because otherwise it's just like we discussed earlier, it's just too much, no? And then the third thing I do is listen to my kids, because they're really my connection point into you young people. That's just go with what feels right. No, there's no right answer, and understanding and learning about everything is impossible. I don't know, Fer, what you do.
I think you should have the last word.
Oh, okay. Okay, so what's my last word for you guys? I think I would say always do what you enjoy, and always trust your gut, and be passionate about what you do, because if you're not passionate about what you do, no one else is going to be passionate about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou.